Can I just ask a few questions about the ACC? From what you explained, so that's for the workplace and for transport accidents. Is that going to extend into like sports and home injuries, any other type of accidents that occur? And my second part of it was to ask you, you mentioned about the workers' compensation. So do we no longer have to pay that? ACC is going to take over that from the levy, or do we continue both?
Okay. No, you'll continue to simply pay your 1%. You'll continue to pay your 1%. When you pay your 1%, from that 1% we'll split it according to that permutation we've just shown on the screen. So you don't have to worry about paying ACCF directly or somebody else. You just simply continue to pay your 1%. And when you pay your 1%, we will then of course have an arrangement where we will then, from that payment, take 50% away for paying your GPs, 40% will go towards the payment of workers' compensation victims, or those who need some payout. Over here, although we have said over here, we'll also cover school injuries. So at the moment it covers third-party motor vehicle insurance. Motor vehicle insurance covers that. Motor vehicle accidents, I should say now, no longer motor vehicle insurance. Motor vehicle accidents will now from 1st of January include workplace accidents and also school accidents. We see quite a lot of that happening. We also want to be able to then, by introducing school injuries, or schoolyard injuries we should say, then we'll know which schools are at higher risk, so Ministry of Education can work to ensure that they create more safer environments. There are many things we don't hear about, some kids getting bashed up at school. Recently there's a much highly publicized situation about that. We also have accidents where kids are fooling around with pencils and somebody pokes somebody's eye, they lose an eye. So there's absolutely no compensation at the moment. Parents can't afford to take them through the court system, etc. So we'll cover workers' comp, workplace accidents I should say, and also schoolyard injuries. So what will happen in the future, I can't say. Of course, the idea would be to expand it, but we have to live within our means. We have to ensure that we don't, bust the budget. We have to take one step at a time. As you know, in places like New Zealand, for example, the exposure is enormous. They're running into billions of dollars. Because over there you can claim for anything, to the equivalent of ACC. Even if somebody walks into a house and is robbing the house and they get injured, they get paid out through that too. So we don't have that. I don't think we'll have that for a long period of time. But other areas currently are those ones that's covered.
So there's no need to pay the workers' compensation?
No, from the 1st of Jan you don't have to. We're helping you save your insurance payment. You don't have to pay insurance. Yeah, it's about $8 million. Employers currently pay about $8 million in insurance premium for workers' comp. So business community don't have to pay $8 million. But just please make sure you pay your 1%.
Thank you, Attorney General. Just one or two questions. First of all, on the 0.5% that goes to GPs, does this have a sort of rule around it? You have to earn so much to be able to access it, or can anybody access it, even if you're not a worker, so to speak?
It's for everybody, every citizen. So even if you're not a worker, so even if, say, I stay at home, or I'm unemployed, I can still get access to the GP. So it's to cover everybody. Of course, we're working through the finer details. We've got the ADB, there's a very good person who specializes in this area. So we have what we call capitation rates that are built up. So we, for example, hypothetically, you could say every visit to GP at $15, we'll pay for that. So a lot of GPs, like I was talking to a GP 2 nights ago at Rishikul High School, and she was saying that, they charge normally about $15. So that may be the going rate. So a lot of GPs actually will probably bring it down to $15 because now they'll get a flood of people coming to them. So, that needs to be worked out. And of course, if I have somebody chopped off my finger, or my finger is hanging off my finger, I'm not going to go to the GP, I'll go to the hospital. So more serious matters will be directed to the hospital. But I go for my, run-of-the-mill consultations with the GP. And most of the times, if you look at people go to hospitals, it's the run-of-the-mill type of issues. So I may go to a GP, assuming I go to my GP because he's my family doctor. I've developed the relationship. And I may have, say, chest pains. So he immediately then can say, okay, I think you've got some cardiovascular issues happening. He can phone the hospital directly, they'll wait for you. Already you've got some form of a consultation, and he may give the pulse rate, etc. So the doctor over there knows exactly what to do with you when you walk in. So they'll diagnose the symptoms.
The other question is around the paternal leave, the family care leave.
Yes.
That's granted to parents to look after their sick family members or children. Is there rules going to be put around that, or is the Ministry of Labour going to put the basic minimum requirements of applying for those sort of leaves? Because in reality, on the ground, you can see abuse of these sort of things. I mean, it's happened with the bereavement leave, and really, it's an additional 5 days leave for both government and the private sector. So is there rules going to be around?
Yeah, the amendments have already been carried out to the Employment Relations Act around that, and I don't have the specific rules pertaining to that. But yes, I mean, it can happen. Of course, you know, somebody may say, look, I'm going to take 2 days off because my wife is really sick and I need to stay at home, or my husband's really sick, and they may be spending 2 days with them in the Western Division having a holiday. People can do that. That is subject to abuse. But we are relying on people's goodwill to not do the wrong thing, but to do the right thing. This is why we've got the 150% tax deduction. So in a way, you are making some, you know, ability to claw back, if you like, if you spend money in that area. I mean, paternity leave, of course, you know, that can be proven. I simply can't say I'm going to take paternity leave when my wife is actually not pregnant. But as far as the family care leave, we can see that happening. But the idea is to, you know, try and from an early stage give something to say, look, we are giving you a particular level of responsibility, and you got to use it properly. So the time that you are actually at work, your productive levels are high. So then you can demand productive capacity being built in. We say you got no need to, you can't complain anymore. We've given you all these incentives. Government's provided the legal framework for it. You are bearing the cost of it. Yes, you may get a 50% tax deduction. So you guys really got to work your butts off now. That's the philosophy behind it.
Just the last one. Can I assume that the 150% tax sort of clawback, it only comes into place if your company is making a profit? So talk about SMEs, micro businesses, non-for-profit organizations. When they put this in, they really can't claim for anything because they're non-for-profit, or they just break even or something. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Unless the CEO of Focus wants to give us some additional break. I don't think so. Yeah, sorry? Yeah. You can carry forward losses too, of course. Yeah. 4 years. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask this question, say, on behalf of my friends. In fact, one evening we were seated and we were trying to work it out, but we were not getting whether it is possible or not possible. So I thought this is the right forum for me to ask. Just a few months ago, I mean, all the due respect to National Federation Party and Swadelpa, they said and promised the minimum wage rate is to, or they would be able to make it $4 or $5 an hour. So when we had that, we were trying to work it out whether this is possible or not, because we were trying to put all the excess together economic-wise and how it happens. And then one of my friends also said, if $4 or $5 is a good rate, then probably we haven't had anything from the government of the day. And then we said, I'm sure there must be some reason, and whether it's workable or no. So say, just for you to clarify, the $4 and $5 sounds very good, but is that a good rate and good way for an economy?
Okay, the minimum wage argument, I think, you know, has been very heavily politicized. So when we talk about minimum wage, we are talking about unskilled work. There are already people on different levels of minimum wage. So for example, you know, Nesbitt here would tell you, for example, if you are working as a waiter, The minimum wage, I think, is somewhere $3.40, about $3.40 an hour. It's not $2.68. If you're working as a boiler maker, it may be, $5, $6 an hour. Those are different minimum wage for different types of employment, categories of employment. The 268 is unskilled work. There was never any minimum wage for unskilled work. So we introduced the minimum wage for unskilled work in 2014 at $2 an hour. Now, generally, people, for example, some people who work on certain construction sites, some people who, for example, work as, unfortunately, what we call house girls, or some guy who comes along and says, I want to cut the grass at your house. They fall into that category, where there's no specific level of training required, etc. So we introduced $2, then there was a review done. It went up to $2.32 an hour, $2.32 an hour. Then there was another review done. It went up to $2.68 an hour. Now, what we have announced as in the budget is that we believe, of course, the minimum wage needs to be reviewed on a periodic basis. You simply can't pull out figures from the air. And when you look at the increments in minimum wage, you have to look at the impact of it on other categories of employment. Now, assuming that, I think NFP is saying you should put it up to $5. Now, somebody who is now an unskilled person, who is getting, say, $2.68 an hour, and you put it up to $5, that's almost doubling it. What do you think the person who's currently being paid a minimum wage of $6.50 an hour will say? He said, I have had to go to a technical college, so assuming I'm a boiler maker. I have to get a certification, qualifications. This person here is unqualified. He suddenly is getting $5 an hour, and should I sit at $6.50 an hour? No, I want mine to go up to nearly $12 an hour. Everybody will say that. This is what you call a spiraling effect of inflation. It's a domino effect. It's a domino effect of inflation. So everything will go up. The rates will go up. Obviously, as employers, as Nesbitt would tell you, the employer is not going to pay from his or her pocket the extra hourly rate. He's going to pass it on to the people who's buying his goods and services. So, if I go walk into a shop and buying tin fish in a supermarket, I may be employing somebody who's stocking the shelf. I now have to double his salary. Then I take my tin fish, I go to the cash register. The cash register person, now I've doubled their salary too. What do you think the shopkeeper will do? He'll pass on all the doubling of the salary to the tin fish. So you'll have to pay a higher price. So that's what you call the inflationary impact of salary increments. So what we're saying, we're not saying there should not be any salary increments or wage increments on an hourly basis. Yes, it needs to be done as society grows, changes, etc. But you need to do it in a more, in a manner that's conducive to the economy. You need to study everything properly. Of course, you need to look at things like social wages. The gentleman who did the academic, who did the study recently, who increased it from 232, 236 an hour to 268, he said you need to look at social wages. In Fiji, we have what we call social wages. A person who earns less than $30,000 a year, we pay 50% of the electricity cost, the tariff rate. We give 90,250 liters of free water a year. If they have children, we pay for their school fees. We pay for their bus fare. We give them textbooks. We give them free milk. None of this usage of these services, the money has to come out from his or her pocket. It's paid for by the government. And it's targeted assistance. We don't give it to everybody. We only give it to those people who earn below a particular income level. In the same way, there's a family that will now get $1,000 for the baby. That means they don't have to fork out another $500 at birth. We are funding that now. So it's what you call targeted assistance. It's also a form of social wages. So a lot of people have said to us, I'm now saving so much money on a daily basis, I don't have to give my kids bus fares. Before, I could not have my children complete school. Now they can. So you have to factor all of that in. I think the SODELPA is saying $4 an hour. And one of the candidates at the USP lecture said that, maybe we realize the impact on small businesses and government will need to subsidize small businesses. I mean, how will they subsidize small businesses? How will we calculate that? So they recognize, some of them recognize, of course, and have admitted it, probably by default or unwittingly, that it will have an inflationary impact. Others maybe are keeping quiet about it. But it's more of a political gimmick than anything else. We have to see, the economy should not be politicized. We need to ensure that if we are able to, if we want to improve our people's lives, and if we need to have continued growth in a sustained manner. Because if you do that, then this is the outcome of it. You have your GDP growing, and this is the impact of it. So we really should not politicize things in the economy. So it's not going to work. No, we are not saying that you cannot have increases. Yes, you can increases, but we should do it on a regular basis. We should do it in a concerted manner, not simply pull figures out from the air. But at the same time, just to very quickly round off, civil servants. I mean, we've had people who were principals of schools before. Their salary they got was $38,000, $39,000. Today, principals of large schools are getting almost $70,000. Now, how did we come up with the $70,000? It was actually studied. It took about 18 months to look at market forces, look at the level of responsibility, etc., etc., etc. Nurses got an 80% pay rise. Because the salaries they got and the level of responsibility they had in specialization was very high. So we have to reward them for that. So it's, wherever it's necessary, we have to do it to retain people. So these people have almost received a doubling of their salaries, almost. We had people, land surveyors being paid $20,000, so they're getting now paid $40,000. They deserve it. There's a shortage of skills in the market, so they need to get it. So wherever it's necessary, we need to do it, but only after careful study. Thank you.
Sir, I would like to thank you for the opportunity given to me to speak during the government's budget roadshow. My name is Noman Ali, and I'm a Year 11 student at Suva Muslim College. This is for the appreciation of the government. So I would like to thank the government for providing our school fees, book fees, and building fees as free. So if all the free fees was not free, I would not have lots of friends in school, and our school enrollment would have been very low. So I have two sisters and another brother who are schooling also, with free school fees and other expenses provided. They're both there for the three of us. My parents are saving around 1,500 in school fees, etc. For 12 years, this would be around 20,000. This money can now go towards our future expenses. It can also take away the burden from my parents and other parents too. Once again, thank you very much to the Prime Minister, yourself, and the Fiji First Government. Vinaka Vakalego.
Thank you.
Humphrey Cheng. When does the bus concession fare come into effect? I'm eligible in my own way because of my age. When I went to Vodafone, they say the concession card is not ready. So I'm just wondering, does it come into effect January of 19 or when? That's one question.
No, in fact, it's supposed to come into effect in the next couple of weeks. We're just working out the logistics with Vodafone. As you know that the bus companies, reluctantly, back in 2008 and 9, when the world price of fuel shot through the roof and went up to about $140 a barrel, we said to the bus companies wanted to increase the bus fare. And we did not want it to be a burden on the everyday traveling public. So we said to them, you keep the VAT component. So bus companies don't pay VAT. So built into their fare is the VAT component, so they kept that. And then we made an agreement with them that they will carry pensioners at 50% the cost, and also disabled persons. So what's actually happened now is they've been sort of complaining a bit about it, and we've said, look, we'll pay the entire cost ourselves. So the pensioners, they will get to travel for free. But of course, we have to cap it. Because if we give you unlimited travel, you might be traveling to Lotoka every day on the bus. It can really get out of hand. Some people can't do that. So we've come up with a cap as to how much you'll be entitled to travel on the buses, and it's up to $25 a month. So most people, for example, if I lived in Suva, say I lived in Samambula, or even if I lived in Nasinu, I can use that $25 in the month. So that's how it will be topped up. So we will top up the card, you'll get the card with that value put on it. So we may actually top it up for you for the 6 months. And you get it topped up and then you use it as you like. As opposed to coming in every month. We don't want you to come in every month. Obviously we want to make things easier. One of the logistics that we are working out to see, we might even load it up for the entire year. So if you want to abuse it and use it all in 1 month, good luck to you, but you won't get it for the rest of the year. That's how the system is going to work. So the bus companies won't invoice us, we simply give you the card with the loaded amount and it's up to you how you use it.
The other one, Minister, is I know the Reserve Bank will always play a defensive role in this, and they always do to, I don't know for what good reason. The reason they stated is for their good, but we hear that a lot of things that we have to import. And because our currency is very weak and the US currency is rather strong, we pay a lot more than what we used to do. Currently, we only get about 46 cents to a dollar, whereas before we can get it as much as 53, 50 or more. Is there any way that we can revalue our currency to make it a little bit better for the consumers in Fiji? That's the one. The other one is that it's not a question so much, but a scholarship. On scholarship, I think there is a great need for scholarship in the solar or renewable energy area. There's too much scholarship in other areas, but the renewable energy, particularly solar, is one area which I think that more scholarships should be given. Thank you.
Just in respect of the foreign currency, we simply cannot always keep on interfering with the value of our currency. Otherwise, you won't get much confidence by trading partners if we chop and change. So if we, for example, say, oh, the US dollar has gone up, let's increase our value of our dollar. So it's being done artificially. The way that our currency is valued is against a basket of currencies. So there's a basket of currencies against which it is measured, and that's how we carry that out. Now, the other point also is you've got to think on the flip side. If you make your dollar too expensive, then a lot of tourists won't want to come to Fiji. Say, oh, it's expensive to go to Fiji. So tourism contributes nearly 37% towards our GDP. And believe you me, Fiji is not the only choice on the menu. There are lots of other countries. They can go to Vanuatu, Samoa, Phuket, Bali, Gold Coast. So you also need to be able to look at those factors too. You cannot simply look at, you know, how much will it cost us to import things. We have to look at on the flip side too. The issue about the scholarships, there's no undergraduate degree in solar energy. There are courses available at universities to do with science. So it may have a component of solar energy. So in that over here, this is why our priority areas are actually in the science areas. So science, of course, includes things like renewable energy. It can include, things like whether it's to do with specific areas of solar energy or wind energy. So different courses will have that component in it. But if there was, I wish there was a degree in solar energy, we'd give it, it would be there listed, but we don't have that, unfortunately. But that, about 70 to 80% of that is fundamentally science subjects, which includes things like renewable energy. Even if you look over here, the ones for overseas, look at it. We don't have speech therapists. There's not a single fully qualified bachelor degree speech therapist in Fiji. Educational, clinical, we don't have clinical psychology courses in Fiji. Occupational therapists, undergraduate studies. Nutritionists, customs, forensic science, meteorology. If you want to be a good qualified meteorological officer, you don't get any courses in Fiji. Undergraduate courses, 3-4 year courses. nutritionist, forensic accounting, actuarial science, genetic science, molecular biology, biomedical engineering, architecture, town and planning. None of the universities offer this at degree level. So we have to send them overseas. And we need people like this, otherwise the momentum of the economy will slow down. Young man there. Oh, there's a gentleman there.
It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you very much for the government of the day for allowing us. On behalf of the underprivileged up in and the ignorance, I may say here, up in the mountains, as it always normally appears in the billboard around the country, embrace the truth and hate lies. And Fiji does better when Fijians unite. I might be running a project later on in the year which will be taking care of the people, natural resources from the top, from the ignorance one. And after I'll do at the paper, I might come around in office too, sir. So, as for Fiji, when we're grooming up in the 1940s, coming up, so when and the government of Fiji got no land at all. I think the resources owners in around here say, in Suva, in Dalave, Singawi, Alami, these people are giving their land for the people from us who coming from the maritime zone islands to come and be here, educated and work for the government. But it goes on and they've been forgotten. That's where I'm coming into the capital investments. As you mentioned, on the capital investments, as you go up here, you look into the Suva city, and you hate the building has been growing so old. And you're allowing them for a capital investment for a loan for 1 million, 25% investment allowance, and 125% tax deductions. This is for the upgrading of all these buildings. The question is, who are the owners? I think it's all the business people. Also, at the same time, the resource owners were giving their land. The business people, the investors were giving their time and also their resources. As I find it here, as I mentioned, the budget, I find out that it looks like if the budget is it's a bit biased, because it's only looking after the investors and the business people. The question is going back to those people, what has the government has been doing to the people, the same people, like the business people are growing up, but those there, out there in the settlement are still the same, living in the same settlement, same houses. And just lately, a few weeks ago, there's a meeting in the Ministry of the government coming in there to take over the land which they staying, and on the same house. The only question here, what has the government has to do, like you are about to do to the business people here and to those down there? This includes Suva, Lotoka, and all the urban areas in Fiji. As you can see, no resource owners of this, of the same, they don't have anything in town, in the city. They don't hold anything. The question is, what can be done to them so they can elevate their life to be partake of this development that your government of the day are about to do. Thus, if you have just to leave them alone as what they are and who they are during the 40s and 60s coming now, and you just have to be concentrated only much on the investors and business people. Does this contribute to the embracing of the truth and the unification of all Fijians, as the government of the day proudly display on the billboard, with so many different culture, tradition, ways, and ethnicity background? So on behalf of the underprivileged, which I say the ignorant people from the interior and from the remote islands, I would like to ask the leaders of today if they can provide a holistic education system to resolve the issue, enabling all citizens to realize, appreciate fully their inheritance, irrespective of who they are, thus addressing their nakedness, poverty, and discrimination to a peaceful and a sustainable developing nation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for your question. There's obviously a whole heap of issues that you've got there written out. Perhaps some of it was written out prior to you coming here, I'm not sure. But let me take it from the top. You see over here, this upgrade of the buildings, we're not giving them $1 million. What we are saying to them is that only if you upgrade your building and you spend $1 million, if you spend $1 million, then you'll get a 25% investment allowance or 125% tax deduction on the amount of money you spend. We're not giving them any money. So somebody's got an existing building, it's run down. We say to them, if you spend $1 million minimum, then whatever money you spent, you can claim 125% tax deduction. So when you file your tax return, you can claim 125% tax deduction. We're not giving them any money. We're trying to incentivize them to fix up the building. So part of fixing up the building is like modernizing the building. You may need the paint job, you may put new buildings, you may put disabled ramp access, fix up the toilets. So who's going to benefit from it? You will benefit from it. Everybody that comes to the town and city will benefit from it. The tourists will come to Fiji, will come to Suva and say, nice city, looks good, maybe we'll come back again. Guess who's going to benefit from it? The guy who sends the handicraft. Maybe somebody from the interior is making handicraft. Will send his handicraft at much better price. More tourists will come. So the place looks much better. We're not giving business people any money. Now you've talked about the issue of land. I don't call these people ignorant. You are calling them ignorant. I'm not calling them ignorant. That's your choice of words. I don't believe people are ignorant just because they live in the interior. As you know, the Suva Peninsula, of course, this area, Rewa Street, all of that, was given away by Ratu Seru Dakambau as part of compensation to the Americans because somebody burnt a ship. That's how it became freehold land. That was freehold land given back then as freehold land. We can't go back and unwind the clock, completely disrupt the entire system. All the banks will leave Fiji because that shop in Cumming Street may be mortgaged. If tomorrow, and it's freehold land, it's mortgaged to ANZ, Westpac, Baroda, whichever bank, Bread Bank, BSP, HFC, whichever bank. If you tomorrow go and say, no, the owner is changing now, they say, no need to be here, we're going to go, because there's no security of title. Right? So that's what's happened in the past. If, for example, people have leased lands currently now, and they're not getting lease payments, then they should be paid for the lease payments. I don't know if that's what you're asking. At the time of independence, 81 to 83% of the land in Fiji was what they call native title, or what we call now Itauke land. 81 to 83% when Ratumara was Prime Minister. Today, 91% of all the land in Fiji is Itauke land. The balance of the 9%, 4.5% is what we call freehold land, approximately, and 4.5% approximately is what we call crown land, or owned by the government. That's the land permutation in Fiji. Fiji is one of the very few countries in the world where you have what you call a settler community, where the ownership of the land by the indigenous people is more than 90%. The issue, of course, is how are we helping them to utilize that land? As you know, in the budget this year and previous years, we've been allocating money for Itauke landowners to develop land. You know, a lot of people have said before, Itauke people are asset rich but cash poor. Yeah? Why? Because they have not been given the assistance previously to develop their own land. So what used to happen, for example, if there's a lot of land here, owned through the, you can go to TLTB, and I'll come along as a developer. I'll say I want to lease 200 acres. And I pay a particular rent, I get the lease, and I may pay, for example, $150,000, $200,000. Then I go, I subdivide the land. I put road, water, electricity from my own pocket. I develop the land. Then I will go and sell each block for $150,000, and I make a lot of money from it. So we looked at this. So about 4 years ago, we brought in, and if you look in the budget, there's an allocation of $12 million. What we got an allocation for is the development of Itauke land. For the Itauke land owners, we already have 11 projects underway. Most of them are in the Western Division, because they've got themselves better organized. There's one project in Tailevu, one we've already paid out. There is, I think, about 2 in Nandronga, about 3 or 4 in Lotoka, 1 in Tavua, and a couple in Ba. So what we do there, for example, if you go to the nearest one I can show you that's quite visible, you know where the Pacific Green coconut furniture shop is in Singatoka, in Yandua. If you look opposite the road from there, you'll see a new road that's being built. So the landowners from there, they came, they said, we've got this land. Please help us develop it. We looked at it, he said, yes. We are putting in the road, we're putting in the water, we're putting in the electricity. Ready-made lots. So now, it's not somebody else that will sell the lease, it'll be the landowners themselves. So they get the cream. Because majority of the landowners traditionally did not have money up front to do the development. Now we're doing the development for them. We say, please, this is your development now. Please make sure you sell it at the right price. We will help them to get the right price. And that money goes in their pocket. They may set up a trust, or they may go individually do equal distribution. That's what we are doing. And I urge you, if you're a member of a landowning unit, you've got some land, if it's feasible, you should subdivide it. We've got money available there. We'll help you develop it. So you see, these are the new initiatives that have been put in place. That's how we're empowering people. And it's actually embrace truth, reject lies. We want you to reject lies. And I think some of the things that you've said to us is what I call very kind of cliched approach to politics in Fiji. Nobody's under threat. Nobody's being discriminated against. Just because you've got that $1 million qualifying system, it does not mean it's against Itauke people or the landowners. It's basically anybody who's got a business. So Fijian Holdings that actually owns buildings, if they go and do an upgrade, they'll also get it. And the owners of Fijian Holdings, the shareholders, are the provinces. They'll benefit from it also. So that's why I couldn't really understand what you're trying to say. So maybe you can clarify.
What I'm trying to say here, sir, on that context is because for us, even the FDB bank, it's very hard for us to, because of the what is needed for the itinerary, like the security and the deposit. But all they have in the land is their vast land, which is communally owned. So what they can do to have a title on the thing also for that, so it can be eligible for the loan.
There's nothing stopping you from getting a title. You can. I know a lot of Itauke landowners who are members of the landowning unit, and they've gone and got a lease over a particular portion of the land. They go to the landowners, they get the consent, they go to TLTB or they go to Ministry of Lands if it's under the land bank, they lease the land. Once they get a proper lease over the land, they can take that title, they take the lease title, they go to FDB, use the land as security and borrow money from it. That's what a lot of people are doing. So you see, I think a lot of this, like some of the things you're saying, is perhaps there's a lack of information out there as to how people can use that. And I think fundamentally there's a problem. And unfortunately, when there is a lack of information, then a lot of people come and, yame, and sort of tell a lot of nonsense which is not actually true. So the reality is that the opportunity is there for individual members of landowning units to also go and get a proper lease. They can do that, like anybody else. In the same way, like for example, if I come along to you and say, look, I want to lease your land. The land members have to agree. Members of the landowning unit, they give their consent, you go to TLTB. TLTB says, okay, you have to pay us $5,000 or $10,000 for the lease, and this is the annual lease repayment you have to do. Under the Fijian constitution now, lease repayments that we do, anybody leasing Itauke land has to pay the market rate. Before, you do not have to pay the market rate.
So the only barrier here, like I say, we are not, now we can have a title, but the deposit, you know, like you say, $5,000 they can pay, but they don't have it. Do the government have liaison on that, if we can,
if you
know
buy,
the value of their land? If,
you see, if you have,
too.
hang on, if you look at this. Yeah. First land purchase. So Itauke leases and also Crown land leases also qualify for this. Right. So if you want to buy your first lease, if you earn less than $50,000 a year, we'll give $10,000 towards the purchase of the lease. That's your deposit. So once you get the purchase of the lease, you take the lease, you can say to FDB, I own this lease. And you know, I don't know what kind of business you want to get into. I mean, obviously you need to have a good business plan. Just because you got land doesn't mean you'll get a loan. Yeah. Yeah. So they can get that. If you buy a first, for individuals, if you're talking about individuals, you can get up to $10,000 if you're buying your first lease for an individual.
The land is communal, you know, Matangali. Can they?
Yeah, but depends what they want to do it for, what they want to use the land for. If you want to do a subdivision, government actually pays for subdivision now. So you can apply through the Itauke Land Development Fund that we have.
Because they might be doing some logging companies and things like that.
Well, it depends what it is. I mean, the subdivision funding that we do provide is for the development of the land. So if you want to subdivide the land, to lease out the land, make money from it, that's what we fund. We don't fund money to do logging for that. Yeah?
Maybe we'll get some papers right and we might come and see you if anything else.
Please.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. Oh yes, yes. We also amended, thanks for reminding me, we also amended the law. So if you, for example, are a member, if you are a member of a land-owning unit, right? So assuming you are a member of a land-owning unit, you have a right to build your house there. If you are also a member of FNPF, we amended the law just a few years ago, you can withdraw the component of housing allocation to build your house in the village. We allow that. Before they did not allow it. You have to have proper lease and title. But we amended the law because we recognize that if you're a member of a land-owning unit, you have full legal rights to be there. Nobody can boot you out because you're registered in the VKB, you're a member of the land-owning unit. So if you've got some funds in FNPF, you can actually withdraw the housing component to build your house in the village also, or on the land that you own as a member of a land-owning unit. That provision is there. And some people have utilized that.
For the resource owners who I'm talking about at the first time, who are giving their land for the people from the village to come and reside here, and now the governments are trying to take over and do subdivision. Do they have a good deal out of that? Because they live, if it's possible, if the government is do subdivision for them and manage it and do their share, go back to investment for generating income.
See, if you're talking about, say, squatters, right? If you're talking about squatters who are living on Itauke land, so you may have a Vakavanua arrangement. They give $20, $30 a month, right? So government now is saying, they go to TLTB, they get the landowner's consent, saying we will subdivide this land. So when government actually subdivides it, they actually have to pay the landowners the right amount of money, which is market-based. It has to be market-based. And when government subdivides the land, so for example, I'm a squatter, right? And when I get the subdivided land, every year I have to pay lease. And the lease money will go to the landowning unit, not to government. Government is just interested in subdividing it so people can live properly. You know, they have proper roads, water, electricity, proper sewage, because the value of that land is not much at the moment, because you've got people, pit toilets here, no toilet there, squatter toilet here, illegal water, illegal electricity. So what we're trying to do is develop it properly. And when we develop it properly, the value of the land goes up. When the value of the land goes up, that means the landowners can demand a higher lease. That's the reason why we're subdividing it.
If I may debate a little bit on the question, sir, but the same thing I'll be asked from those people. It comes to the cost of what you're going to give it back to them for the subdivision. And it goes back to the NLTB or whatever. And it goes back individually. But first, the land is communal owned. It's a Matangali unit. But this is it'll break through the change of leadership within the community. If you have to give it in a individual account, should it be good for the government to just invest it for some, but for communal owner, for communal use?
So you don't want equal distribution of land lease monies, that's what you're saying?
Yeah, for that it's break down the chain of leadership within the community as
not necessarily. We've seen many landowning units, for example, in the Western Division, many landowning units in the Western Division, they have large amounts of lease monies paid to them. Yes. From tourism, from other businesses that are set up on the land. Some of them have, some people consent to give a certain percentage of their share to some community project or some community fund. Some of them consent not to do that. But that's their right to do that. It does not mean in those landowning units the traditional leadership has been broken. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It's just that the equal distribution has taken place and those people actually can have the right to do what they like with that money. Of course now, one of the things you also have to recognize is that even babies now who are members of landowning units, they have money set aside for them too. So some of these babies, by the time they reach 18, they'll have lots of money. They become an adult. So that's the savings for them too. That's what's happening. Okay? Thank you.
In regards to Ministry of Youth's budget, I just need a clarification on one of the emails that was sent by one of the ministry staff. Recently, the Ministry of Youth is holding consultations with this youth policy, national youth policy, and so prior to this, they appointed a board, advisory board, and the issue with the national youth policy is that it was raised in the email by a few of the young people, so I responded to that email, and so the response came back from the Ministry of Youth was that they don't have sufficient funds to advertise that they are holding a national youth policy. So what they've done is that they're only going to be sending the email through their networks, and then they will, and they're supposed to respond to it. So the dilemma that I have with that is this, that when you are using existing networks, sometimes those networks don't work, and sometimes we have very opportunities, people who access these opportunities, and they don't actually share the information down. So my question is, does the Ministry of Youth really don't have the budget to advertise, like in the papers, that we're going to be holding a consultation. If you're interested, please apply.
Yeah, actually the Ministry of Youth does have money. In fact, the Ministry of Youth budget has increased by $1.3 million compared to the last year's budget. They do have funding. If you want to go to the website, you'll see that there is actually funding given for various administrative costs that they need to have. For example, whether it's advertising, whether it's stationery, all those sorts of things actually built into the it's head 25.
Yes, I mean, that's what surprised me, because I followed through the debates of the national budget and everything, and I know that to place an advertisement in the newspapers is not that expensive from a ministry point of view, and to create an application form where you apply, but what we're seeing is that there's a process being followed of nominations, like they nominate or they select it. So when we had the National Youth Policy consultation, I can't really gauge the whole percent, but there's a large population who are actually old enough to be grandfathers who are present in the youth consultation. And so when government allocates funding for young people's consultation, and those fundings are being used for another set of population, what we're doing is that a generation is missing out on that consultative process. And then what we have is young people like, older people like generations who are here who are questioning because they don't understand the governance structures. And so it is my humble request, if the ministry does have a budget allocated for administrative reasons, then I will really appreciate if they advertise. And when they advertise, then they have, through the if they are accepted, then they come into the consultation so that it's more wider consultation, not just the same group over and over again. Thank you.
In Program 1, Activity 1, Head 25, under Seg 5, they have advertising expenses of $10,000. So the money is there. But please forward that email to us. It helps us to follow up. Thanks.
My name is Mubashir Ali, and I am a student at USP studying Bachelor of Commerce degree in Accounting Economics. I am on the National Topper Scholarship, and I am very grateful to the government of today to provide this scholarship, and only God knows if I would have got this scholarship if Fiji First government was not in power. It is really grateful to the Fiji First government in increasing the National Topper Scholarship from 630 to 970. I am one of those 630 students, and my sister could be one of those 970. The scholarship has taken away so much worries and burden away from my parents. My sister is a secondary school student, and government is also paying her fees. Thank you, Fiji First government. I can't imagine to pay close to 25,000 fees to complete my studies. And where would had my parents obtained the loan? The National Topper Scholarship would also help to get away from poverty. Thank you to the Prime Minister, Attorney General, and the government for providing great hope for all students of Fiji.
Thank you. You know, you'd be surprised how many times I've been people have said to me, they said, we wish they had at least TELS and free education in our time. We would have finished high school. A lot of women have said to us that, you know, if they had free education in their time, they actually would have finished high school, because when we had large families and parents had to make choices, generally the women did not go to school. They stayed at home because they'd get married and go away anyway. That's the way people thought. So now, today, actually, if you look at the school roll, we have more females in high school than ever before, because a lot of them are now going to universities and also high schools.
Thank you, sir. I'd just like to ask on the certain things that's really concerned in our society today. Please apologize me if I'm repeating this question. I was a bit late to the consultation because of my family commitment. I'd like to ask about that the mothers are receiving $1,000 upon the newborn. Right, that's okay, we should have support from the mother side, but what about, does it also cater for the teenage mothers who make wrong decisions?
Okay, any more questions? Oh, that's the only one.
Another one is, second one is on our younger generations. Nowadays they are violating their rights. For example, they are not very concerned about their responsibility towards their education, towards their parent, and they do not try to obey to their parents. And when parents do something, then they just pick up a phone and call 1325 child helpline. And secondly, when the child goes to in the school, he tries to rebel to the teacher. And when the parents go to the school on parents-teachers interview, and the teacher is explaining that the child is not doing homework, not listening, and there is no way about. So we have any measurement where the child will be accountable for their responsibility towards their education, because now we have a free education, that's good, we appreciate. But what about the children, the young generation? They are violating their rights towards education.
Any more?
Another one is about Fiji police force. On particular date and time, my dad saw 2 individuals smoking marijuana, and he called on 919. Police lady said, I'm coming, but till today nobody came.
Okay. So any more?
I can keep on speaking, but we need some response, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you can keep on asking and I'll give you a response all together. No problem.
Sorry, I'm not here to debate or argue and things.
No, I know that, but I just wonder if you have
later.
Okay. All right. No, because I do need to go somewhere else. I want to wind it up. I mean, we've been here for over 2 hours, so I just need to, you know, put a time limit to it, because you've got other places to go to. But The first issue regarding whether you have teenage pregnancies, mothers who who are teenagers who become mothers, yes, they will also get it because they are mothers. It does not mean all teenagers will go and start getting pregnant just because they're going to get $1,000. $1,000, they don't get $1,000, they'll get $500 first. The second $500 they'll get when the child goes to year 1, so 6 years later. So you can't say as a result of some teenagers becoming pregnant, we can't help mothers. If you look at the majority of the women who get pregnant in Fiji are actually adults. The issue about teenagers getting pregnant, of course, is something that's of concern. There's no doubt about that. A lot of it is to do with our value systems. A lot of it is to do with parental guidance. A lot of it is to do with the ability of parents to talk openly with their children. I don't know how many parents actually sit down with their teenage kids and talk to them about sex. What will happen if you go and have sex with somebody? The reality is that there are many influences in our lives now. Your children watch movies, people who have access to internet, they have other influences. They go to school, they get influenced by other people. So the reality is we need to be able to talk about these things openly. But you cannot debunk the idea of this $1,000 just because you think that some teenagers will get the money, number one. And the reality is that many low-income people do need that assistance. Number two, the issue regarding the police officer not turning up, I don't have the answer to that, why they didn't turn up. They should have turned up. I don't know the circumstances pertaining to that. In respect of children not listening to their parents, not listening to their teachers, I mean, are you proposing that we have some kind of law against it? We can't do that. Again, a lot of it boils down to the environment that they're brought up in. I know many instances where parents completely ignore their children. Some parents are away at nights drinking grog or doing whatever they do. They don't spend enough time. That's one of the reasons why we've actually given paternity leave. How many fathers have changed the diapers of their babies? How many fathers have actually done that? So, child rearing is not something you just flick a finger and it happens. You need to be able to connect with your children. And this is why we've sort of, for example, given things like paternity leave, so you bond more with your family. And you generally find in an environment where you have a loving environment, where you find that the family is a very strong family bond, that you'll find less truancy in children. When there is a lot more disconnectivity between parents and the children, then you'll find that you have a lot more truancy. So yes, it is a problem. I mean, I was, I remember when I was doing law, part of the elective subjects was that we used to go and teach high schools. And this is going back, in the 90s. And I remember going to this one particular high school, this is in Sydney. And when I walked into the classroom, this is a high school, kids were walking in and swearing at the teacher, using the F word. And I was shocked because, I went to Marist and we never did things like that. And then I said to the teacher, hey, he's talking to you like this. He said, oh, they're not bad kids. You've seen the last school, they used to pull out the knives on us. It's in one of the suburbs in Sydney in the 90s. So, changing societies, there are different ways of dealing with problems. And we need to work together as a community. Of course, there are some good children, who listen to their parents. Some of them do actually appreciate the fact that they have been given free education. Some of them may not, but we need to develop new ways. One of the things that we've been pushing for, we want more student counselors, in schools. We need counseling. And we don't have enough counselors in Fiji. In fact, a lot of the teachers double up as counselors even though they don't have the qualification. But they do it because they have a passion to look after kids. Just a short story before I finish off. We have this budget consultation before the budget. I think it was 2 budget consultations ago at Suva Grammar School with something like 250 students from different schools in the Suva area. And a lot of them actually stood up and complained that they don't have enough counselors. They said, no, some of our teachers double up as counselors, but they're not very good. They don't understand. I said, look, we are looking for counselors ourselves. In fact, we've just come up with a restructure of the ministry. What we are saying is now, rather than having one counselor per school, we'll have one counselor for different allocated number of schools, so they can move. You know, on Monday they can be at that school, Monday morning, Monday afternoon, so people can actually line up the interviews so they can do as many schools as possible. So they all complained, and I said, look, I agree with you, and we're looking for more counselors. Then I asked them, I said, how many of you, when you finish high school, you want to pursue a career as a counselor? Nobody put up their hand. Nobody put up their hand, because nobody saw counseling as a career path for themselves. How many parents in this room or outside this room say to their children, oh look, you're very good at listening to people, why don't you go to university and qualify as a counselor? Most people say, I want you to become an accountant, engineer, doctor, lawyer. That's what people say. So our value systems are different too. So we need to also change with the changing times, and that's very important. Any more questions?
So last one before we round up today is regarding the minimum wage rate. I'm not going to enforce whether it should be increased or should not. My concern is how the government is monitoring that those people who qualify to be paid, they are paid. Because I know of some situations where people are paid $80 per week and they're working from Monday to Friday 8 to 4 and Saturday 8 to 3. So what measurement is the government is taking to ensure that those people who fall in that category, they receive that amount?
No, it is a big issue. Of course, we've changed some of the laws as far as the labor laws are concerned. We've given more resources to the Ministry of Labor to do better monitoring of systems. And it's not about minimum wage. It's also, for example, you weren't here, but we talked about minimum wage before, where what we have said is that minimum wage is only for unskilled workforce. People in different categories of employment, their hourly rate is $6.50 an hour, $7 an hour, $3.30 an hour, $4.50 an hour, $5 an hour, whatever it is. And even those people, for example, one common complaint we get is about security guards. The minimum wage for security guards is about $3.20, $3.30, $3.20. It's $3.20 an hour. It's not $2.68. But I met somebody who said, I get paid only $2 an hour or $2.68 an hour. Some towns, some companies are worse than others. In Vanua Levu, we found there's a lot of complaints because sort of further away from Suva, so some people think they can abuse their workers. A lot of, like recently I got a complaint where people who work overtime, more than the 40-hour week, they're not getting paid overtime. So it's not just about minimum wage, it's about things like that. Some of them aren't being paid the meal allowance when they're entitled to meal allowance. So it's an overall issue in terms of compliance. So this is why, for example, we've, working with Fiji Employees Federation, they're here, so they can tell their members to do that. Government now, for example, when we look at assessing people who apply for tenders, you have to be tax compliant, you have to be FNPF compliant. All those areas, if you are not FNPF compliant, for example, one of the things we want to do with FNPF, then we won't accept your tender. If you are not tax compliant, we won't accept your tender. So the same way if there's complaints against you regarding labor laws, we want to move in that area to see whether you're actually paying people or not. The other area we've seen when people subcontract. There's a contractor, then he subcontracts, and he subcontracts to somebody else, and sometimes he subcontracts to somebody else. So the people down the chain don't pay, and people along the line don't get paid. So we are obviously, Honorable Usamate has been going around the country trying to create an awareness about it. We're obviously trying to set up more avenues where people can complain directly. A lot of people also will say to you privately, but won't want to formally come and complain. They said, if I formally complain, I might lose my job. And that's a big problem too. So, it's in the same way if somebody says, well, the guy bashed me up and robbed me, I'm telling you, but I won't go and give evidence to the police. So how can we charge the person? So that's an issue.
So can we have certain policies in place to publicly to be aware of that, just like for income tax, the rule was in place that certain companies who do not pay their tax, they will be advertised publicly that these are companies that they are not paying their tax. Can we have certain regulations like that so that before a person applies in an organization to work, they know that this particular company is paying less, underpaying to the public or violating their workers' rights?
Well, I mean, tax is not violating workers' rights. Tax is not...
I'm saying just similar to that. Just like we have advertised, people will not aware of that certain business house do not pay their tax. And similar to that can be done so that public are aware before they are applying to applying in organization. They know that this particular organization is not paying their workers to the right amount they deserve to be paid.
We don't have that policy at the moment.
Can we have it?
Well, that's something we have to consider. We just don't decide just because you suggested it now. We have to.
No, I'm not imposing my idea.
Just let me finish, yeah. Let me finish. I know you're all hyped up. Just let me finish. The way that policies are made is that we have to look at the implications of things, right? You don't just make policies overnight. There may be certain privacy issues. There may be issues pertaining to the people who actually have lodged the complaint, whether they want their names published or not. Now, if, for example, if you publish the name of a employer who may not have paid somebody correctly, if you publish that, maybe the fact of the matter is the person was terminated, that's why they did not pay them the right salary. Maybe they stole from the company. Maybe when you publish the name of the company saying they did not pay one worker the right amount of money, will that work? Then I say, well, who did you not pay correctly? Will that worker want his name or her name revealed to the public? Those are the kind of things you have to look at. So when you actually develop a policy, there may be legal ramifications. So you have to look at all the various laws, what's the impact on it. That's how you develop policies.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I just have a question in regards to the field of reproductive health. In line with his first question, which is around teenage pregnancy, we have other issues such as HIV, STIs, and access to contraceptives. So my question is, do we have a consideration in the budget for this, for the field of reproductive health and access to services?
Yes, there is a Ministry of Health. If you look at the Ministry of Health budget, they've got a number of areas. And Ministry of Health budget, let me just tell you what head it is under. It's head 22. Again, you can go and get this on the website. And we have actually specific funding for areas such as HIV and awareness in that respect. Also, we can do it through the education system, and I think that's very important too. It goes to the same point this gentleman was also highlighting. A few years ago, I remember when people talked about distribution of contraceptives, a lot of people said, oh, if you're going to distribute contraceptives or make contraceptives available, like through vending machines or whatever, that means everybody's going to start having sex with each other. There's a kind of very right-wing response to that. So it's a fine line, because some people think that the more you talk to your children or teenagers about sex, they'll do it more. Not necessarily. Because they need to be aware. A lot of people who actually fall pregnant, women, young girls who fall pregnant, they don't know. I mean, because they may get caught up in a moment. It's not like they all sit out and say, let's go and have sex. A lot of them are sort of what we call accidental pregnancies. So they fall into a trap. They do not know how to say no. Those are the things that we need to be able to discuss and talk openly in a mature environment. So we do have funding. We do recognize that problem. In fact, if you look at the Constitution, there's a specific provision in the Constitution that the government will provide funding to schools, but made direct to talk about things such as reproductive systems, because we recognize it is and can be an issue. But if you look at under the public health services, we have various provisions there. Regarding, for example, it says there's a specific provision, the Fiji Adolescent Reproductive Health Program, $295,000. There's specific funding there for that. That's Program 2, Activity 1, under Head 22. Yeah? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. As we said, that if you want further information on this, you can go to the website, you can get the information from this particular website here. And of course, you can get the slides available from here too. The budget speech estimates, the supplement. We have the flyers like I highlighted to you. These are the flyers. All of that is available there. The ECAL, infrastructure, water, roads, and also, of course, the supplement is there. The supplement is this, which is the detailed analysis, which is the ministry over here, that's the supplement, and the estimates, which is the big thick book, which is this one here. So you can see which ministry, which department, which section in which ministry is getting how much. That's also available on the website. And of course, all the other information that's there. Thank you very much for your participation. I wish you a good afternoon. Naka.